Welcome to Be the Good with Kate, the show where guests leave you inspired to uncover your passions and discover tangible ways to make a difference along the way. Here we talk to individuals who are doing just that, individuals from all walks of life and industries. While we have featured guests from Bali to Utah, Florida to Japan, and just about everywhere in between, this season we're going uber local with my new/old state of New Jersey. But New Jersey, why? Land of shopping malls and the Turnpike? Well, because your host, that's me, Kate Chiaricciolo-Tente, is a New Jersey native but longtime Manhattan resident. That is, until recently. As I rediscover my home state, first we need to talk about the fact that it is not the land of shopping malls and the Turnpike. It is a land of such a variety of people and cultures and landscapes. It's the land of Bruce Springsteen and Whitney Houston and Frankie Valli. It's the land of shoreline and country and forests and mountains. And well, I could go on and on, but we got to get on to our episodes. So I wanted to bring on some guests doing good here in New Jersey. But just like in prior seasons, something I love about human connection and inspiration is how you certainly don't need to be from the same place or a similar background to get so much out of hearing from a person. In fact, I think it's better that way. We notice how we as humans are so similar in so many ways and how each of us has the power to make a difference in our own lives and in the lives of others. And I hope you are inspired here to start, restart, or continue your journey of finding your passions and helping others along the way. Easy and impactful way you can help this podcast reach more people, share with a friend, or leave a review. Thanks for your help in inspiring more people. Now on to this week's episode. Let's spread a little more goodness in the world. Today on Be the Good with Kate, I'm pleased to introduce you to Colleen Imler. We actually go way back. We crossed paths many, many years ago near our hometowns, and Colleen's now in North Jersey, and she is on a mission to spread the word about postpartum and maternal mental health. She has two wonderful children of her own, and I'll let her share the rest. But Colleen, thanks so much for being here.
Happy to be here.
And please tell us more about who you are and why you're being the good and what you're doing today.
Yeah, so I am a mom of two independent and spirited little girls. And I have just really, as a transition into motherhood, I had my firstborn in 2020, which was a really rough time to become a mom. Yeah. Very isolated in general because of the pandemic. On top of all the anxieties and everything happening in the world. I have a history with anxiety, so I already had that kind of in my toolbox in terms of things that might go wrong. And so when I transitioned into motherhood and I had my little girl, I was struggling. It was a big challenge for me. It was, I had postpartum depression. I actually didn't know I had postpartum depression until probably a year or so after. Because,
really?
Yes. Which was, and it was more so like, I have a therapist. I'm very open about, I'm pro therapy. I have been in therapy since 2019. So, I talk with my therapist, but she never labeled it. And then later when I started, digging into Postpartum Support International, which is an organization that has a lot of great resources for new moms and dads and has a lot of support and does a lot of education for providers about mental health and maternal mental health specifically. I started looking at okay, well, what are the signs of postpartum? I always thought I had postpartum anxiety because I had anxiety always. So when I started looking at what is postpartum depression, and I'm reading this and I was like, oh my goodness, that was me. I was hopeless. I felt like I shouldn't, my kid was better off with me, not her mom. There's a lot of areas of depression for postpartum, and I was hitting all of the different check marks. Wow. And I asked my therapist, I was like, so we never really labeled it, but did I have postpartum depression? She's like, yes. I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea.
And did it help to hear those words, or was there a reason she had not used those words?
That's just not her style. Okay. I love my therapist, and her style I jive with really well. So she just never really put it in black and white like that. We talked about my sadness, my crying spells, my hopelessness, my isolation. And I just never put two and two together. And when you're in that cloudy, hazy darkness, that's just your normal. You don't see anything else. So it was very interesting. And when I went back to her and I told her, I was like, I need to know because now I'm very in my head about it, like, wasn't I, like, what was happening with me? And I just wanted like that clear definition to just kind of sum it up. So once I had that, it was like a lift of my mental health. And I was like, it wasn't just me. It wasn't just me having a hard time. Like there was much more in the works happening. And I'm not the only one that goes through this. So it was finding that community. So the stats are 1 in 5 new moms have a mental health problem, whether that's anxiety, depression, OCD, even psychosis, which is really, really rare. But all of these different mental health disorders, 1 in 5 new moms get that. And that was me. And now that's me twice. So it's like, once you kind of put a label to it, it's nice to kind of own it and identify with it and say, like, yes, that is a part of me, but it's not just who I am. So it was very good and very therapeutic to be able to say that. And then, of course, that kind of led into writing it. I was writing all about my experience giving birth to my daughter, everything, all these lessons and revelations that I was having. Like, for instance, like, you're gonna miss your old self, and that's okay. Like the self you were before you became a mom, like that person. It's almost like I talk about, like, wishing for the good old days, like back in high school or college, when there wasn't adult problems, you had friends, you were able to have fun, like you miss those days. So just kind of working through and really using writing as a therapeutic process for me was huge. I mean, I love writing. I'm a communications professional, so writing has always been a tool in my toolbox. So I was doing it, and then I just started writing more and more and more, and it became this story and this kind of pattern of just like everything that I tell my friends when they got pregnant. I was like, oh, well, this is what I've learned in my experience. And like, it was just a lot of stories that I would share with my friends. And then writing it down, it just became this book. I didn't call it a book for the longest time because I had severe imposter syndrome because who am I to write a book about being a mom? So,
but I think that's probably also one of the things that makes the book great is that you are raw. You are not someone who's like, well, I am an experienced professional on motherhood. It's like, no, you're someone who's in the thick of it right now. And that is very relatable.
Yes. And what I've learned is that when you're not in the thick of it anymore, your role is now the village. Like this idea of the village that helps raise children has evolved so differently than when like my grandparents and my parents even were raising children, because there was such more of a proximity of closeness with friends and family. And now it's not physically there. So you have to show up as best you can as part of this, social village, or just like texting and, letting people vent to you, or, Venmoing them a meal so that they can go get DoorDash or something. Like the village has shifted so much for new moms. But when you're in the thick of it, like that's your time. Like you shouldn't have to worry about others. But once you're out of like the littles area, and I feel like I was a little bit out of it with a 3-year-old, but then I got dragged right back in so, with number 2.
Yeah, because your oldest was 4 when you gave birth to this.
Yeah.
And you are now only 5 months postpartum from baby number 2.
Yes, I am 5 months postpartum. Round 2 is, my mom always jokes, like, are you going to write another book? I'm like, no, I'm not.
Yeah, you really don't have time to write another book anyway.
No. But it's been challenging in different ways. I would say the biggest thing is that, you know yourself as a mother. So that identity shift of becoming a new mom for the first time isn't as rocky as it is with first-time parents. So I'm a lot more confident in my role as mom. I mean, the first couple months, like the baby was easy. It was the 4-year-old that was giving me the most challenges, because while I was dealing and caring for the baby, the 4-year-old still wanted the attention. She still wanted to play. She still wanted everything. And she saw the baby getting attention. So then she started, acting out and whining and doing all the things to get attention. And that's what was the most challenging, I would say, during postpartum number two, because
Oh
you
my
don't have to worry
gosh.
about that the first time.
And I'm hearing you say, oh, the baby was the easy part. If that was the easy part, I mean, having just gone through that part with a first baby, that didn't feel easy at all. And so if that is the considered easy, and now with a 4-year-old's heart, that's just like a whole other level. And, some people listening right now, I'm sure are like, yep, been there, done that. Or maybe they're like, I have 4 kids. But then there's other people who probably don't have any children that are listening who are like, oh my gosh, how is this, just sounds so overwhelming. So I don't know, what do you say to someone? Like, I know you have a whole book about it, but if you were to just give someone one sentence of, this is the best. I was about to say advice, but then I really try to stay away from that because everybody wants to give new moms quote unquote advice. But what is just something that you tell someone to just support them in this sometimes feeling very epic journey of about to have a baby?
Yes, it is definitely epic. And the biggest thing I would say is, I mean, it's like two parts, right? You got to know yourself, you got to know your limits, you got to know what you need, and then you need to voice those needs. So, for me, I was very fortunate. I have a great partner, and while he might not understand everything that I'm going through, he certainly, accepts whatever I say and whatever I need. He tries to help me. My mom has been incredible this time around for postpartum round two, and just being here physically as much as she can be in those early months because I just needed another adult with me. One of my biggest challenges was always being alone with the baby or alone with the kids. So having somebody else here was like instrumental. So it's not as scary as it sounds. And I know sometimes when I when I talk about it with my friends or even through the book, I'm like, I don't want to scare anybody from being parents. Like I love being a mom. Like I love my kids. But it's a challenge, and it's you developing as a person. So you got to know yourself, and you can't be afraid to use your voice and ask for help. Or for me, this round, I was really trying to accept help because
Yeah.
even asking was still hard. But if my friends or if my mom said, "Hey, can I do this for you?" I would say yes. And I would be like, I don't want to admit that I need help, but I do need help.
It's so hard. It's so hard. We are in more, like you said, the village idea has shifted so much, and that's hard. It's hard to ask for help. It really is. So kudos to you. What is the most surprising thing about where your life is right now after what you've gone through and writing about it and just all of it?
I think it's how open I've been with
Ah,
like outside of my family because I'm a big believer in, you have to share your stories and you have to share the good and the bad because we don't we don't share the behind the scenes on social or Instagram. Like we only share our highlight reel. So it's very difficult for those who are in the thick of it that are scrolling through their feeds with a crying baby and they see all these beautiful newborn photos and these picture wonderful families and the pumpkin patches and the apple orchards right now, like you like, not that I think people want to see like the rough side, but I think it's necessary to just air it out and say this is real life, so that way they don't feel alone, because I think a lot of it with our culture is you share the good, you don't share the bad, and
yeah,
then everyone thinks, oh well, it's really bad for me, I must be the only one that feels this way, everybody else is such a good mom, I'm not a good mom.
yeah.
So it's and that's what feeds into, for me, it was my depression because I just didn't think I was cut out for the job because I
Mhm.
clearly couldn't handle it. So I think that being open and sharing, and with postpartum round two, I've been sharing on Instagram some good and some bad and some teary videos because in the moment I was like, "Ugh, I don't want to do this right now. Like, who wants to see me almost break down in tears?" But I'm like trying to practice what I preach. And like,
Yeah.
I'm in the thick of postpartum right now. Like, this is my opportunity to be able to capture it and share it and show that it's not always sunshine and rainbows, but it's also not a complete disaster either. Like there are some really good moments. And once you get out of that thick of it mentality, it's so much easier to be able to navigate, to look back, and then that's when you can try and support others and help validate their feelings.
And it's so helpful to hear other people's stories. What if when we think about it, what is more helpful, to see the cute baby in the orchard, or to see the mom who's like, I don't know what I'm doing, or I feel all these feelings right now. Like it's that's going to be more helpful. You made me think of a friend the other day. We had like a text back and forth, and I said, oh, I'm at the playground with the baby on the swing right now. And she was like, oh my gosh, you are doing such a great job at mom life. And it was one of those moments I'm like, this moment I'm here on the swings, you didn't see, the 2 a.m., the 5 a.m., the like about to scream and trying not to, the like all of those aspects. And you're so right that it's really easy at times to forget that is happening too when we do see the highlight reel, as you said.
Yeah, and it's funny because even my interactions with people in public now have begun not to be negative, but just like a little bit more like real life. Like even when I was pregnant and coworkers would be like, "Oh, you look fantastic. Like, how do you feel?" I'd be like, "I feel 9 months pregnant. I don't feel good at all. Like, I'm ready for this baby to be out." Or like we were just in the grocery store earlier, and an older gentleman like smiled and commented on my 4-year-old who was like in a good mood skipping down the aisle. And I was like, "Oh, she looks so happy." I was like, "Well, she's not screaming yet, so we're doing good." So
a real life thing.
yeah, but like this is what happens. Like there are tantrums in very public places, and then there are really sweet kids who help pick up after their baby sister and figure things out, and you just never know which one you're gonna get.
And I'm so glad that you are helping to spread the word and make things more just something that we talk about, because it's every one of us was a baby at one point. Like it's not like it's a new phenomenon. It's not like it's uncommon. We were all babies. So it's like, why aren't we talking about this miracle of life and what happens next more, because it is so needed. And there are so many moms who have been suffering. And someone else on the podcast this season, Alexandra Pato, she is a postpartum nutritionist, dietitian, and that was so interesting to like hone in on a very specific aspect of postpartum too. And like you are talking about postpartum depression and postpartum in general, mental health, it's so crucial. And something that I really wanted to ask you, talking about honing in on a specific element, for someone who did not have a baby during the pandemic, or for someone who doesn't have children and just doesn't know what that world is like, can you kind of paint a picture of what it was like to have a baby in such an isolated, scary time?
Yeah. I mean, even just the end of my pregnancy, so everything kind of shut down when I was about like 22 weeks pregnant. So my entire third semester, or not semester, trimester.
I did that too. I always said semester instead of trimester.
Yeah, my entire third trimester was in my house, pretty much by myself, waiting for my husband to come home because he was still working, and he would come out and, do the strip down, go take a shower, all the things, wiping everything down. So it was pretty lonely. And then just the hospital experience. I mean, the thing is, I also didn't know any different. So, and I think that's also what led to some of the isolated feelings and depression, is because I didn't feel the support in the community, even at that first 48 hours, because in the hospital, they did the best they could. I had, a great team that was helping me, but they didn't spend time with you because they wanted to limit any type of exposure with patients. So they would check on you and then they would leave. And everyone was in masks, so you couldn't see, anybody's facial features or a smile or anything like that. And then you're just going through this, process of birth, which is wild. And my birth was definitely what we would call traumatic. So going through that, going through recovery, being able to, have this little baby placed into your arms, and like they don't come with a manual or like an instruction video, and then like after 48 hours you're like, all right, you're good to go, and you're just
I know What a concept. They just let you leave with this human.
Wild. And there was no hospital tour during COVID. There was no like prenatal classes that you could take. No there was no I didn't know anybody else that was going through it at the same time I was, for the most part. So I did have one friend who had her baby boy in the beginning of the month that I gave birth. So we would have a little bit of a camaraderie there where we would kind of talk to each other, but it's still like you didn't see anybody. My mom quarantined for a few weeks and stayed with us, so that was a tremendous help.
Wow.
But otherwise, it's a little crazy to give birth in a pandemic and worry about germs. And I had put a lot of pressure on myself to breastfeed because I felt that that was the best thing to keep her safe and keep her healthy in case she was exposed to anything. So we had a lot of challenges in the beginning with that. So it was just a roller coaster, but it was nice to be able to like finally get out of the house, be able to do things again towards the end of 2020. And still, obviously it's a little, I mean, I feel like we're still dealing with COVID. Like COVID has not gone away.
Yes.
Luckily the severity has for the most part, but still a risk. And there's always illnesses and there's always germs, and it's always something scary to bring a new baby somewhere or have exposure. So that idea and sense of it with a new baby was probably very similar, but it was just the isolation and the fear of the unknown of what was happening in the world. That was definitely, I think even the statistics, I think went up. I think postpartum depression was 1 in 3 new moms during the pandemic.
I believe it.
So
and that's just the diagnosed postpartum depression.
Exactly.
Right?
A majority are undiagnosed. So
there you go too. Like that's an astronomical number. It's even higher. Wow. Well, I think about, anyone who went through something like childbirth through the height of the pandemic, and just my heart goes out because that must have been the isolation, and I guess it's just similar to, someone who was elderly and isolated, or someone, there are a lot of versions of that. But I just keep going back to that. I'm so glad that people like you are out there continuing to spread the awareness and the realization that you're not alone. So please tell us more about your book and where we can find it.
Yes. So my book is called Becoming a Parent, 16 Truths and a Lie. And I thought about it, I think I was a few days postpartum, and I started writing down her birth story because I just wanted to get it down for me, and I never intended to write a book, and then it just kind of happened. So it talks about a lot of the different revelations and things that I went through, my personal birth story. I lay it all out there. And then the last chapter, which is the lie, is that I would never ever do it again. And then the chapter is that I'm pregnant again with my now second. And that's kind great. Of the start of all the mental thoughts of, can I do this again, and what am I doing? But also I'm very excited. And so it's for me, again, it was very therapeutic to kind of write it out and have this. And I decided to self-publish it. So I put it out into the world, and it was my public pregnancy announcement, pretty much. So
yes.
Everyone found out I was pregnant because I said I wrote a book, and the lie is that I wouldn't do it again, and here I am. So
I love it.
But it's available on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. I also have it in ebook for Apple, Kindle, Nook, all of those great ways. And I donate 20% of all my royalties to postpartum causes, specifically Postpartum Support International, which has chapters, I think, in almost every state now, which is a great way to be able to support and volunteer locally for postpartum causes. And the Blue Dot Project, which is also in partnership with PSI, which is Postpartum Support International.
Oh, great. Colleen, that's fantastic. And, I feel like we did answer this question already, even throughout our conversation, but I have to ask it because I ask everybody at the end, why do you feel it's important to spread these positive news stories about that there's help out there and that we're not alone?
I mean, just that, you are not alone. If you feel like you're in a darkness or in some kind of fog, especially as a new parent, it's not you. It's everything else that's going around you. It's your intrusive thoughts. It's the feelings. You can get help. There are people here to support you. It's temporary. It will end. I am proof of that. I went back and did it again. So,
Amazing.
there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and you just need to stay the course, have some great support, and have those people who can help validate your feelings and get you through the toughest parts in order to enjoy your kids and enjoy what motherhood or fatherhood is, which is absolutely amazing. I wouldn't change anything. I love my kids.
I love it. And Colleen, where can we find you online?
Yes, primarily I am on Instagram. It is Colleen M. Imler. You will find me there, and I am sharing my postpartum round 2 story currently.
Yes.
So feel free
And
to follow along.
some really cute pumpkin pictures with those babies too, I might
Yeah.
add.
Yeah.
Absolutely adorable. Colleen, I can't thank you enough for being here today.
No, thank you, Kate. Thank you for having all these stories and talking with folks and spreading the word yourself. So we're all part of the village.
We are all part of the village. I love how you word that. Thanks, Colleen. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this helpful, a 5-star review, like, or comment means the world to me. And if you found insight in this episode, chances are someone else will too. Share with a friend to give them a boost today. Until next time, I'm Kate Chiaratelli-Tente, and this was Be the Good with Kate, Season 8.